With Marvel Studios Phase 5 wrapping up and us getting into Phase 6 with such heavy hitters like Doomsday and Secret Wars ending Phase 6 and taking us into Phase 7, let's talk about Marvel's Phase 6 multiple missing projects that are still on the slate and what exactly these projects might be to all build towards Avengers Secret Wars. Okay, so getting into this, I do want to preface that what we are talking about is just films. We are not talking about Disney Plus series that are going to be thrown in between multiple release dates and all over the place, which would then include animation, which would also obviously include live action. What we are talking about is the films we know that are coming out in Phase 6. Now, for those that aren't aware, Marvel's Phase 5 officially ends with Thunderbolts on May 2nd of 2026. And Phase 6 starts with July 25th, 2025's release of the Fantastic Four First Steps. So that's where we're going to start. And just because I wanted to make it simple, I did make a quick breakdown of all the release dates that we know and that we don't know in one image. So here it is. So what this consists of is the known release dates that are coming up over the course of the next few years, ending at May 7th of 2027 with Avengers Secret Wars. And what we have here is Disney has still kept their release dates for February 13th of 26, July 24th, and November 6th. So these are the unknown dates for upcoming films, being multiple films that we don't know. And one caveat I do have to add here is that this does not include Sony's output and their collaboration with Marvel Studios for the upcoming fourth Spider-Man, which means that we have 4 unknown dates and 3 unknown films along with Spider-Man 4. So let's get into each one of these dates. So let's start off at February 13th of 2026. Now there are tons of films that could honestly be slotted in here, and this would mean that this is the film leading directly into Avengers Doomsday. Now, to me, there is only one possible choice for release here. Well, 2, but I think 1 makes a lot more sense because I believe it's further along than most people believe. This would be the sequel to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, aka Shang-Chi and the Wreckage of Time, which was the placeholder date and trademark that they had. And the reason I believe this is going to come out here, 1, the name just makes sense and it perfectly ties into everything that's going on with the multiverse, and calling it the Wreckage of Time also implies, hey, look, time is breaking apart, time runs out. They're clearly doing that in other films and establishing that whole concept, as we saw in, for example, Deadpool and Wolverine, how time runs out once you remove a anchor being. So this is definitely something that I think gets explored in this, and also the fact that the director of Avengers 5, the Kang Dynasty at the time, was the same director, Dustin Daniel, who directed Shang-Chi, and he left that because he wanted to focus on the sequel. This, to me, is the optimal place and placement for Shang-Chi 2. Now, of course, I do got to bring up that there is reportedly still in development a Ten Rings TV series. We haven't heard much about it, but the pandemic kind of put a stop into all the development of all these weird projects that they had. So I assume we're going to hear about this coming out somewhere around here or slightly after it, and that they will further explore that element. But again, that's a TV side of things, so I don't want to place it in the actual, timeline that we have. Okay, so looking at this, February 13th, Shang-Chi 2, which leads directly into May 1st, which is Avengers Doomsday. Now, Avengers Doomsday goes by, and we got just a bit of time till July 24th of 2026. Now, truth be told, this is probably the hardest one to place. Once again, I'm going to use process of elimination and using my big brain power, which I clearly do not have, and guess that they need something that's not exactly multiverse and goes in a different direction to give people a palate cleanser and something else. Also, the impact Tony Stark will have on everything needs to be explained, and I think this is where you could drop Armor Wars that leads into the events of Avengers Doomsday, or you could also swap this film with Shang-Chi and they both have the same effect. The Wreckage of Time could also be the fallout of Avengers Doomsday, and you could have this film on February 13th. That's why I said I'm kind of a little murky on what goes in that February time slot, because both of them work, but I honestly think you could swap these two depending on what happens, just like they played around with Spider-Man and Doctor Strange's placement, and both could work in terms of their story. So I definitely feel like this film is either here or February, and it makes sense because it's the fallout of Tony Stark's impact on Rhodey and everything in the MCU, and his armor's falling into bad hands. So imagine what happens when Doctor Doom shows up. He looks like Tony Stark. Hence why I think this film could be placed in either of the places. So Armor Wars is definitely coming out that year. I feel like I can feel it. So back to this chart, let's say February or July is Armor Wars or Shang-Chi, since they're kind of interchangeable. There's also a spot missing here, but we'll cover that in a second. Because I believe November 6th of 2026 is the most obvious film you could possibly give them. It's got to be Doctor Strange 3. He already leaves us off on a major cliffhanger with Doctor Strange 2. They gotta further explore the multiverse, talk more about incursions that are coming, which will play a factor in the whole Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. I think more into Avengers Secret Wars, because if my theories are correct, Avengers Doomsday is ending with the universe being fragmented and then being rebuilt into Battleworld. Doctor Strange straight up playing along that, where Doctor Strange is missing from the 616, and then his film ends with a giant incursion and the reshaping of Battleworld, and that cliffhanger 100% builds up the hype, makes the film more important. Doctor Strange 2 was important as one could imagine, so this to me makes a whole lot of sense placing it in November. Now, it's not here, but I think December of 26th, we get Spider-Man 4. Spider-Man 4, boots on the ground. We're doing a personal Spider-Man story that, like Doctor Strange, at the end, will end up cracking open the multiverse. Maybe the other Spider-Man return right at the end of the film. Doctor Strange shows up with them, and he's like, guys, bad stuff's happening. Battleworld starts. I think this is how you handle that film. It's another Armor Wars style palate cleanser. It's a big year, a lot of Marvel stuff that's happening, but I also believe this film could shift to February or March of 2027, leading directly into Avengers Secret Wars, unless for some reason they want to make Spider-Man 4 the fallout of an Avengers film like they did with Far From Home with Endgame, which I think is the wrong choice, but again, who knows what they're thinking. So if you've been following, this is the slate that I'm presenting, and I think all the films, I think I explained good enough on why I think they belong where they belong, why they're integral to what they're doing, and how everything works. And obviously after Secret Wars, it's a reset point, and then we're going to get to a completely different MCU that sees a lot of changes and franchises leaving, new franchises and characters coming in. But I think I figured out what exactly all the dates were, so let me know your guys' thoughts down below.